All right, people, I'm back. Today's episode is going to be a music video. I promise you, there was going to be Marilyn Manson versus Rob Zombie, battle of the heavy metal rock stars. Now, this is a very interesting, compelling video because this is something I've never done before compared to the world's best artists from two different time periods against each other. So let's start with Rob Zombie's history first, and then we'll get to Marilyn Manson. Now, Rob Zombie started in the 1980s, 1985, 1986. He was into heavy metal, and the first 4 or 5 songs he did were so good that he made a fully fledged album, and he had a strong following. I mean, this guy was so good in the 80s that by the time we got to the 1990s, television producers and movie producers wanted some of his rock songs and some of their films and television shows. Now, I didn't start listening to Rob Zombie, to be honest with you, until the 2000s. Around the time period where professional wrestling had hit its all-time high, and all of a sudden he did the theme song for Edge, whose real name is Adam Cole, whose stage name in wrestling is Edge. When he did that song, Never Gonna Stop It. Then there was I Feel So Numb, I Fear No Man. Those were 3 good songs. And let's not forget the soundtrack of Punisher Warzone. He did that, and he even did the theme song and the soundtrack for Devil Rejects, 1,000 Corpse. Now in the 80s and the 90s, I think his albums went from platinum to double platinum. He went from selling 100,000 to almost 1,000,000 copies. And by this time period, he was like 15 years into his career. And he was good. He had long hair that was locks, big, strong, stern looking guy. And a lot of people liked his appeal. They liked what he brought to the genre of heavy metal and alternative rock. In fact, that by this time period, his movie career began to take off. By the time he got to 2005, he had directed his first feature film, which was going to be, Devil Rejects, 1,000 Corpse. And, of course, we all know that he did those Halloween films, which are largely hated and bashed by the horror community. So anytime they talk about Rob Zombie's name in horror, a lot of people get very angry and upset. Great musician, great rock star. Great when it comes to alternative rock and heavy metal rock, but when you talk about his movie career, he's directed a total of 8 to 9 films. So now he's become a film director, a screenwriter, and he's pretty good at producing and directing and writing Hollywood feature films. Problem was, look what you done to the Halloween remakes. And his movie career began to take a huge peak, but his music career began to go downhill in the 2000s. So he had a start in the 1980s. He had the best success in the 1990s, but by the 2000s, you could see that after 5 or 7, in between 5 to possibly 7 albums, you could tell that, his sound of music changed. By this time, the music industry had seriously changed. It wasn't the same anymore. And everyone was copying and imitating everyone. And Rob Zombie got to a point where he didn't want his sound of music to be the same like everybody else. So he changed the sound of his music not once, but a total of 4 times. He changed it to try to stay fresh with new audiences. And like I said, I didn't start listening to his music until the late 1990s, early 2000s. That's when I became a Rob Zombie fan. By then, he had already done 4 or 5 albums already. And people who were already Rob Zombie fans were not huge fans of his new music. They didn't like his new stuff. They liked his old stuff. The stuff from the 80s and the 90s. They didn't like none of that 2000s shit. You know, I like some of the stuff from the late 90s, 2000s. I never heard none of his music from the 80s. Um, so that's what I know about Rob Zombie. Now, as of lately, he's been very quiet, low key quiet. You know, he's more into directing and producing and writing feature films. And every now and then he might go to Six Flags Magic Mountain or Universal Studios Hollywood or Knott's Berry Farm. And he might perform some of his old songs from the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s from time to time on an occasion. You know, if it's a horror convention, he'll show up and, you know, advertise and promote his new Hollywood feature films. So that's what he's doing as of today, you know. Now, let's get to Marilyn Manson. Now, Marilyn Manson, on the other hand, is a little different. You know, if Rob Zombie is like The Undertaker, because Rob Zombie took this one concept and it lasts for like 2 decades. It lasts for 20 years. And it's hard to take a concept when music keeps evolving and keeps changing and to stay irrelevant for 20 years. Like most rock artists like Rob Zombie, usually after 5 or 10 years, they slam into a wall and their music career is over. But this guy survived for 20 years off of one concept, an entertainment of music, you know, from heavy metal to alternative rock, you know, to bringing in a little bit of some edgy, new age rock. You know, like I said, he changed the sound of his music a total of 4 times in a 20-year span. So I'm not saying Rob Zombie's like the Undertaker of music. I'm just comparing how long Undertaker's wrestling career lasted to Rob Zombie's career. Rob Zombie's career lasted for like 20 plus years off of one concept. And it's hard to do that in today's landscape of music. Most people have a hard time doing that, taking one concept and it just lasts for 20 plus years. And anytime you hear some of his old songs from the 90s and the 2000s, people will bump it in the car, in the truck, or on a motorcycle, or a cell phone, or an iPod. So he's still relevant. You know, you hear those songs, Never Gonna Stop It, I Feel So Numb, you know, I Fear No Man, you know, Dracula. He made a song about Dracula. He made a song about Halloween. And he takes this one concept and he plays it out in his songs. Now, Marilyn Manson, on the other hand, Marilyn Manson's like, I don't want to say he's the Michael Jordan of rock, but he came in a time period in the 1990s, like around 1993, 94, somewhere around in there. He came around in there and he did something that only a few artists are great at doing. That is taking songs that were written and produced 15, 20 years earlier before he got in the game and make the songs just as good or better. Like Sweet Dreams. You know how many times Sweet Dreams has been remade as a song? Like, when you hear his version, it's unpredictable, it's weird, it's strange, but it works. Sweet dreams is made of me. Who am I to disappear? The 7 seas, everybody is looking for something, someone to use you. You should know the song when you hear it, if you're a Marilyn Manson fan. You know, there's my personal favorite from the movie soundtrack Spawn in 1997, which I think was his best album. His best fucking song ever. And this is what got me to be a Marilyn Manson fan. And I was fucking hooked the minute I heard this, A Long Road Out of Hell. You know, there's Sweet Dreams, there's that. And of course, he did some songs for the WWE. You know, he did The Beautiful People. 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 You know, there was that. And of course, there's If I Was Your Vampire. But he remade Sweet Dreams and he remade Cry Little Sister. Now, if you've seen the movie Lost Boys in the 1980s, they already had an artist who did the song called Cry Me a Little Sister. Now, this might be a shock to you, but that's not the first time or the second time Cry Me a Little Sister had been remade into a song. The guy who did Lost Boys wrote Cry Me a Little Sister, but he made it for the movie. But there was a song of that before he did it. And then here comes Marilyn Manson. He takes a song that's already good and he makes it better than it ever was before. Now, me personally, I'm still going to go with the Lost Boys soundtrack version of Cry Me a Little Sister. Now, Marilyn Manson's version of it is still good. Sweet Dreams, a lot of people argue his version of Sweet Dreams is better than the artist who made Sweet Dreams, which was made by a female artist who was in the country soft rock. Sweet dreams are made of the, oh, who am I to dis... You see the difference in the same song, right? Marilyn Manson takes Halloween, makes songs of Halloween. Marilyn Manson comes in and talks about Jesus Christ. He makes at least 9 songs about Jesus Christ. You know, pagan religion, you know, the church, you know, all of that stuff. One minute he dresses up like a woman, next minute he dresses up like a teenager, and he's got an unpredictable look to his style, you know, and you could never tell when he's gonna do a song. You know, he get on stage, he could be drenched in blood, and the horror community loved the hell out of Marilyn Manson. You know, the 1990s, he was kicking ass and taking names. You know, he had a lot of fun. You know, he popped up in movies, television shows, commercials. You know, he wrote 4 books. You know, they even had him on South Park, you know, Beavis and Butthead cartoons. And the guy was a good attraction. The guy was not afraid to speak his mind and tell you what he personally thought. If he said he didn't like something or didn't like someone, he didn't hold any punches. He spoke his mind. And yeah, he was largely hated by the church community because, like I said, he would make fun of, you know, pagan religion, you know, Protestant Jews, and they would hate him to death. You know, they wanted his albums set on fire. They wanted his shit destroyed. Like, you think Tupac and Snoop Dogg had it terrible in the 1990s when they became a big phenomenon in pop culture and music? Marilyn Manson had just as a difficult time. You know, got arrested 5 times, you know, once drinking under the influence. Then there's heroin and drugs involved. Then there's assault and battery. You know, he's been arrested quite a few times and in and out of rehab, broken up with hot chicks. You know, I'm serious. And as of right now in my 30s, I can actually relate more to his music today than I did back when I was a little kid. See, my national exposure to Marilyn Manson started in 1994, 1995, summertime. I got tired of listening to rap music, and I wanted to be a smart ass, so I ended up going out from the back seat to the front, and I changed the radio, and there I hear Sweet Dreams. And my mom come back and go, who told your smart ass to change the damn radio? See, at that time, my mom didn't want me to listen to too much rap music because of the profanity language. And once I heard his voice, I was hooked. And my mom had a female friend that was a police officer for 10 years. And when she wasn't being a police officer, she was a bodyguard for celebrities in the entertainment business, television and film, business, music. And one of her clients was either an agent or a publicist of Marilyn Manson. And I remember one day my mom had pizza and I woke up at 6:45 at night, and I remember her friend looked at me and said, do you even know who Marilyn Manson is? And I go, no, but he sounds like a badass. And she said, well, he doesn't do hip hop. He doesn't do rap music, okay? He's not Tupac. He's not Biggie. He's not LL Cool J. He's doing alternative / heavy metal rock. And that's a different style of music. So it's not the same. And she showed me a couple of his videos so she could explain her point furthermore. But it wasn't until I started watching professional wrestling, WWE, back then called WWF, where he made a song called The Beautiful People, that once again I got fucking hooked. I liked it, his shit. And when he did the soundtrack and the song A Long Road Out of Hell for Spawn, again I was hooked on his music. So when you go to golf clubs or bars or nightclubs, or you go to Halloween parties or college parties, his stuff still plays. Now, he has lasted throughout the years. You know, they said that he was going to have only a 5-year career or a 10-year career and fade into existence. And time again, he has proved the critics wrong once again. He's been around for like 25 years and he's managed to also take a concept and make it last. Now, he's done collaborations with other artists. You know, he's had his share of, teaming up with people like Korn, Saliva, Disturbed, and making some great music with those artists. But then when he's by himself as an individual, he's got great creativity. He loves art. He likes hanging out with Johnny Depp. And quite frankly, he's lasted. And to me, if I had to pick an artist that gives you the passion, that gives you the emotion when you hear his voice, I gotta go with Marilyn Manson. You know, he does all the horror, every time there's a horror movie, he does the vocal tracks. You know, John Wick, he did the soundtrack to John Wick. You know, he did the soundtrack to Resident Evil. So he is still relevant. He still has fans that to this day are still bumping his music. And you got guys today that imitate his style, but nobody comes close to doing it as great as Marilyn Manson. Now, by a slight edge, by a slight margin, I say Marilyn Manson's a better artist because even though he took songs that were already there 15, 20 years earlier, he created some songs you've never heard of. He took some concepts and made them better. You know, he transcended music in a way. Now, when you look at music today, they don't have no artist that can come in and do some wild, unpredictable shit like he does. You know, Rob Zombie's kind of mellowed out now. You know, he's had his heyday. And in the beginning, Rob Zombie was better than Marilyn Manson. But if you look at it in his prime and you look at today, Marilyn Manson is just simply better than Rob Zombie. It's no disrespect. It goes by what you do when you're in the spotlight. And Marilyn Manson showed that even after all this time, he could take a song from 10 years ago or 20 years ago and make it better. He done songs with Lady Gaga. And again, the guy shows that he's good. Like when he did a song with DMX, nobody anticipated him doing that and crossing over into another genre of music. And he did it so smoothly that it sometimes makes you wonder, just imagine had he ever done a song with Michael Jackson or Prince. Just imagine what would have happened had he had the opportunity to work with those talents. I mean, you'd be surprised what type of great creativity you get out of Marilyn Manson. With other artists, you can't get that. So in this video, I'm going to say by a slight edge, by a slight margin, I give it to Marilyn Manson. So this was a very tough video to make. You know, next time in my music video series, it's going to be Notorious B.I.G., the late, great Christopher Wallace versus Drake. So stay tuned for that video. Until next time, peace.